Ed's introduction reminds me of one time I was arrested for concealment of a deadly weapon when I was a child. And we went to court, and the public defender, or my lawyer, or whoever got up and was talking, was reading a statement, and it sounded like he was describing Douglas MacArthur, a cross between Douglas MacArthur about my war record and Jesus Christ. And the judge hit the gavel down and said, "Dismissed in the interest of justice." And the DA and everybody was up screaming and said, "Why are they letting this kid off the hook after, you know, he assaulted a policeman, allegedly?" And the bailiff has got me by the arm, and I said, "What's going on?" Everybody's pandemonium breaks out in the courtroom. And he says, "Kid, see the door over there?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Just go for it. Walk slowly. When you get out the door, just keep running until you get to your car and never come back, because he released you." Well, the description that Ed made or gave of me is accurate. And the thing that he didn't say is that we're going to go through some things today, tomorrow, and Saturday that are going to make you very uncomfortable. They're going to, what I call the pucker factor. Some of you, as we used to say in the military, only the quartermaster laundry is going to know just how anxiety-filled it made you. How many have been in the military in this room? The people that haven't been, do you know what the quartermaster laundry is? It's the people that clean your shorts. You get it now? Jesus, we got a weak group vis-a-vis the military background. But everything that I'm saying today are based on the over 50,000 business decisions I've made. I've made more business decisions, I would venture to guess, than this whole room put together. Because as you're going to learn as we go through this, high-performance people make decisions like this. High-performance people don't go Lotus 1, 2, 3 and all the crap that we've got that we can take advantage now vis-a-vis crunching numbers. In my judgment, the worst thing that ever happened to being an entrepreneur is when the PC came out. Because now we can spend, and there's some computer nerds in the group, I can tell just by looking at you. I know. We spend our lives at the PC crunching numbers. Now, how many have heard me speak before? So you've heard this analogy. When a good-looking man or a good-looking woman's walking down the street and they look hot, you got to go to your Lotus 1, 2, 3 to figure it out? No. When a hot deal comes to you, Mr. Hoffman, you ought to know that it's a hot deal and not have to have somebody crunch numbers. Because 99 times out of 100, your gut instinct is correct. And we go through all these machinations and all this crap to make us feel more comfortable with our decision. Because at the root of the problem is we're afraid to make a mistake. By the end of Saturday afternoon, or Saturday early evening, you will have been exposed to a great many vignettes, a great many stories, not just mine. We have a few of my stars have come, and I'm not paying them to come here. They paid their own airline ticket to relate to you over the next 3 days just how bloody easy it is. Now, one of my female stars who couldn't be here, a lady named Candace Snow, said, "Dan, I'll give you all these testimonies if you promise you'll never do a seminar for women in Houston, Texas." Because she said, "I've got Houston, Texas right by the short ones, and I don't want you to come in here and tell all these women how to do this." So I've never given a women's seminar in Houston, Texas. I made that deal early on. I probably shouldn't have made it. It was one of my bad deals that I've made in my business career.
What was your gut feeling on that?
My gut feeling was, at the time, I needed her testimonial. So it was absolutely simple. I made the deal with her, and now she lives in River Oaks in Houston. She drives a white Bentley, and she's single, 42, and got a ton of money. And her business has grown. Testimonial says 301%. That 301% was in the first year. It's grown many thousands of percent since I started helping her. Now, by the way, how many haven't ever heard me speak publicly? Well, you're in for it then. You're in for it. Now, people ask me all the time, why do I do this? I'm where anybody in this room wants to be in their dreams. I live in a castle. I didn't know my home in Palos Verdes, Rolling Hills, was an estate until I looked at O.J. Simpson's house. If that's an estate, I'm in an estate, because you could put his in my, in my backyard. So, with an estate overlooking the ocean, why am I doing this? Certainly it's not for the money, because I don't dominate the industry yet. And even the individuals that dominate the industry don't make a lot of money. That used to be pocket change. The reason I do this is because I want to evoke permanent, lasting change. And it gripes the hell out of me, as I said in San Diego, for those of you that heard me in San Diego, that these guys get up and gals get up and get paid money and sell you tapes and sell you books and sell you workshops and seminars that haven't done it. It never ceases to amaze me how gullible mankind is. But I received a fax yesterday, and I'd like, Burl, I'd like you to read this. Come up here and read this. This is why I do this. This is unsolicited. The gentleman's not here, so I feel free to read it, or for Burl to read it. Can we have a mic? Does she need a mic? Where's the mic? Behind you. This is a gentleman that attended the October 6th seminar before we start. October 6th. He's seen me speak one time. It's not quite 30 days. This guy does not own a business. He's not rich. And by the way, there's some very successful people in the audience today. They're where you wish you were. Maybe not in your dreams, but where you wish you were today. And they're still here. Well, here's a guy, you'd call him a working stiff. That's what my dad would call him. A working stiff that doesn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. He took some of the concepts. Burl's going to read about them. We just got the facts. It stated when? November 1st. Burl, please read it.
Dear Mr. Peña, I recently attended your one-day seminar in San Diego this past October 6th. Thank you very much for a presentation with substance and heart behind it. Many of the other presenters of the Marketing Super Conference simply did, he has that on there by the way, simply did not give me much to lean on, whereas you took the straight to task and made it accountable. The few spokespersons who had integrity gave good ideas, but only you provided the ground rules for the next step after business startup, nearly quantum growth. Sorry, I can hardly see this. I came away from San Diego convinced, not hyped, that I too can do it, and I am. Today I was awarded the top management position in this company, which is the operations manager. When the position became available, I approached the president and sold him on my abilities, leaning heavily on the credos 3 through 5. Using the information from your seminar and videotapes, I drew the graph depicting exponential growth during the company's early years when the boss is still an entrepreneur, and the flattened curve as the boss becomes a manager. I drew a 45-degree line both upwards and downwards, explaining in order for him to grow that he must once again assume the role of the entrepreneur and have management be more involved with the operations of the company. My boss was impressed because this is exactly where he's at. He started this company from ground-based zero, and now after 5 years of operation has over $10 million in annual revenue. He wants to continue to grow, and I told him I could help using your techniques. One of my stipulations when accepting the operations manager position was that he allow me to attend more of your seminars. I hope to see you again in the new year and learn more about Quantum Leap. Thank you. Best regards, Jerry Rukavina. Can I say something?
Sure.
This young kid, has called me. I met him in San Diego. I had to sit with him and had dinner with him one night, and he almost begged me, will you please introduce me to Dan? Please introduce me to Dan. I said, no. If you want to meet Dan, you go introduce him. He has telephoned me every single night since he got back to Alberta. I live in Ottawa, Canada, and he has telephoned me every night asking me if he should use Dan's techniques to get this job, and I said yes, and we went over how you could do it and things like that. And I also suggested that he negotiate getting into Dan's seminars. So, and he did, and he did a very good job. So the other thing, can I quickly, I'll steal your thing here. He said he wanted to do a deal, and he didn't know enough to do a deal with Dan, so he said, can I do a deal with you? And I said, well, I don't really have anything right now. And what he said to me is, well, anything, just anything. So I said, well, I know of this deal. I need $350,000 for it. Go find it. Well, lo and behold, he called me 3 days ago, and I think he's got the money. This is like a kid that just works in the oil patch, has no business experience, so it works.
Thank you, Burl. Burl's going to get up and talk later because she's one of my stars. I don't know how to turn this off, so I'm just going to set it down. The point is, the reason I do this is, one, I pay you guys to come do this because I get off on this. I have a lot of fun. I get off when I get letters like this, and I get a lot of them every week. As the individuals come up, as the 3 days go by, and talk about their stories, how they started. Now, some of them started with some money. Burl wasn't poor when I met her. But she's increased her net worth 3 or 4 times in the last year since she first saw me, back in, I guess, mid-1993. But the point is, it works for a guy who's a working stiff. It works for a guy that owns a business that's doing $10, $20, $50 million a year. Now, I'm going to go through an analogy before we get started. And by the way, I went back, I spent 5.5 days preparing for today and tomorrow and Saturday. And the reason I did this is I went back and looked at all my notes since I started this business, which is May of 1993. I went back and I looked at all the comments from people that attended the seminar. And by the way, I believe that there can be a bad question. You know, who are that moron saying there are no bad questions? I don't believe that. I believe there can be stupid questions. So I want everybody to understand that from the get-go. And I went back and I looked at the most complaints. I looked at the biggest criticism. And the biggest criticism of me, other than that I'm egotistical, is that there's a lot of repetition in the seminar. Well, ladies and gentlemen, because there's only 4 or 5 points that you have to know. And anybody that tells you any different is not being truthful with you. There's only 4 or 5 major points to being super successful, to be a high-performance person. And people that take more, you got to do the 31 days and you got a new deal every day, and that's a lot of crap. That's not true. High-performance individuals, number one, are all in love with themselves. I have never met a high-performance person in my life that doesn't love himself. And as some of you have already heard me say, if my wife were here, she's coming tomorrow and Saturday. She couldn't be here today because she works in the post office for Assistance League all day, once a week, for nothing. And so she couldn't take off from Assistance League down in San Pedro, down here with the poor people. She had to make sure, that's why she's not here today. But if she were here, and you can ask her tomorrow, she says, I worship the ground Dan walks on. But my love is transitory compared to Dan's love for himself. High performance people feel good about themselves. Do you think Ross Perot, Lee Iacocca, Gates, Jobs, Scully give a damn what you think of them? Ross only recently, because he was running for office. He couldn't care less what you think of him. And quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I don't care what you think of me. Yet most everybody in this audience cares about what people think about them. Their sister, their brother, their mother, their wife, their colleagues. Why do you think they call these high-performance people mavericks? It's because most people don't like them. And we're going to get into this really heavily over the next 3 days. Really heavily. Now, as we go through this, another criticism is I don't understand how it applies to me, and how do I take direct action? Now, if anybody asks me a question come the end of the day on Saturday, how does this apply to me, and how do I take direct action, I'm going to jump on their chest physically and drag them up here. Because as we go through this damn thing for the next 3 days, if you don't understand how it applies to you, you stop me. If you don't know how to take direct action, you stop me. Because I don't want to read on comment things at the end. Well, I don't understand, Dan. That criticism, and it was on about 60% of all the forums I read, is a criticism because they're afraid to speak up. You may not want to speak up, fine, but don't put it on the critique sheet then. I don't want to see that crap anymore. Because I give you an opportunity. And I'm going to leave this up all day long, least you should forget. Does everybody understand? Does anybody not understand that? I've made it pretty clear. Another critique or criticism, and I don't believe there's any such thing as constructive criticism, ladies and gentlemen. I think, and that's, even though I give a lot of it, another critique was that I speak too quickly. But as you're going to learn, don't waste time on things you can't change. I'm not going to be able to slow my speech down. I'm 49 years old now, and I apologize for that. I don't really apologize for that. That's a lie. But I speak too quickly. And the last criticism was that some of the examples that I use are acquisition-oriented, and I've been called an acquisition guy. I've made a lot of acquisitions. I've bought a lot of companies, but I've started up a lot of companies. But these principles apply to a guy who works for his boss and uses the charts. And remember that chart I used where it shows when you get to a certain level in your business, you either become a professional leader, you stay an entrepreneur, or you go down the toilet, basically. Well, I mean, he just drew that out for his boss, and it's quite a simple chart. And there's a lot of sophisticated charts that a lot of people use, like Drucker and Peters, and they're all great. But most of those charts aren't applicable to businesses like this. Most charts are like that are applicable if you're IBM or whatever. Now, I'm going to go through about a 2-hour introduction, and then we're going to open it up. I want everybody to introduce themselves. And I'm going to ask you what you hope to accomplish in the next 3 days. What your biggest challenge is, what your biggest revelation, and I will tell you whether, in my judgment, it has any possibility of, remote possibility of being successful. If it isn't going to be successful the way you're doing it, how I would change it, or whether you ought to can it and put it down with a tidy bowl man. Some of you will be apprehensive to give me your challenge or your revelation because you're afraid of the third alternative. You know, it's going to go down with a tidy bowl man. I used to, when I was on Wall Street, one of the biggest commodity brokers in America, who was also the president of the Bentley Association of America, a guy named Acton Thurston. I used to tell Acton, because he really believed in commodity trading, you can make a lot of money and help people in their financial planning. And I used to tell Acton, it's better you give them a gun to blow their brains out. Because my experience with commodity trading is that it's great for a risk part of your portfolio, but if you think you're going to base financial planning on commodity trading, you're living in a dream world. You're living in a dream world. We're going to pass you out a folder a little later on. Not yet. I want to get through my introduction first. Any questions on anything I've covered so far? Oh, for those of you that haven't passed in your releases, would you please pass them in? Now, yes, sir.
Dan, do I have this accurately, this chart?
Wait a minute.
Thank you very much. Entrepreneur, professional manager going down the toilet. Is that
That's it. You got it. Okay, now, for those of you that have heard me speak, and I know Burroughs heard me speak 8 or 10 times, by the way, the last thing on the criticisms, you're going to hear some of the things you heard in San Diego, for those who just heard me 3 or 4 weeks ago. But the difference between San Diego and here is we're actually going to take your business and we're going to walk you through steps, assuming you bring it up to my attention in front of the group. So we are going to assume that this group's got 100 IQ. For some of you, I'm giving you a little. For some of you, I'm taking away. And for just this example, let's just pretend I've got 100 IQ. Can anybody have 10 times 100 IQ or 1,000 IQ? What's the highest IQ anybody's heard of? 220, 240, right? Okay. Well, then why do people make 10 times more than you? 1,000 times more than you? Why? If nobody can be 10 times or 1,000 times smarter than you? Has anybody got an answer? Yes, ma'am. Oh, I like this lady. Where you come from? Gee, I like this lady. I like this lady. Because they dream bigger than you. I have dreamt bigger than anybody in this room. I had 2 goals when I started Great Western Resources, July 13th, 1982. One, to be a $2 billion company, and one, to be in the top 5 highest paid energy executives in the United States. I fell $1.55 billion short. Great Western only got up to be about $450 million. And I'm not talking about revenue, ladies and gentlemen. When you talk about a $5 million company, $20 million, I'm talking about market value and a stock exchange, what I sold it for, the net worth of the company. Audited by a Big Six, not my brother-in-law. And I was in the top 5 3 years, and I was the top paid executive 1 year. Now what if I had set a goal to be a $20 billion company? Where would Great Western have been? My life changed a couple years ago when I met Ted Turner, and I wasn't too fond of Ted, the mouth from the South. But he said, Dan, my daddy told me or left me 2 things when he died. 1, he left me with a couple $1 million, and 2, he left me with the idea. He said, Teddy, set goals you cannot accomplish in your lifetime. Now, if I can change the way I live at age 48, almost 48 when this happened to me, then everybody in this room can. Because by definition, your goals are not high enough. You ought to multiply them by 10, by 3, add 3 or 4 or 5 zeros. The difference between those people and you is they think bigger, they dream bigger. And with those big dreams comes big problems. I don't believe in challenges. That's a lot of crap. They're problems. They always have been, they always will be. So if you get nothing more from this 3-day experience with me, it will be that if you're not willing to make those sacrifices, then don't beat yourself up. Just say, fine, that's not for me. And please believe me, being a high-performance person, super successful, isn't for everybody in the world. It's not. And I'm going to talk about making only a marginal shift in your business. I'm not talking about changing everything you do. I hate to use this example because now a lot of the purported gurus use it, but it's the best one I can think of. The difference between being a 250 batter and a 350 batter is the difference between making $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 a year and $5, $6, $7, $8, $9 million a year, right? That's 1 hit in 10 at-bats. 1. 10%. If that's not marginal, I don't know what the hell is. It's a marginal shift in your thinking to make a geometric or quantum difference in your business. Oh, I love screaming. I mean, it makes me crazy. Oh, hell yes. Last night when I came to have dinner with Burl, I was listening to one of my tapes on the way from my house. I sat in the parking lot and I was crying, listening to myself. And somebody walked by my car and looked in, and I was crying. I love listening to myself. And some people say it's the best stuff I ever did. It was when I was at the Harvard Club in New York City a year or so ago, 2 years ago, I forget when it was. And I was all fired up because they told me the New York crowd was going to be a tough one. Harvard Club, prestigious, whatever. So I was knocking on all 12 cylinders that day. But I listened to myself, and I came home, and then I listened to it on the way home after I had dinner with Burl. And Linda says, "Why are your eyes red?" I said, I make myself cry listening to that stuff. It's so good. I mean, just dynamite. Anyway. Those of us that couldn't be here, and you people are getting a double dose because most of you saw me just not a month ago. And for those of you that are questioning why you came by this point in the morning, permanent change. See, most of you will forget what I'm going to talk about in 60 to 90 days, 80 to 90% of it. Without replication, without repetition, without practice over and over, you'll forget it. And that's why people that come and see me time after time after time have not marginally better results, significantly better. When the people get up and start talking to you over the next 3 days, you're going to see, and it's no accident, the people that have heard me the most have been the most successful. It's not an accident. And whoever said practice makes perfect was smart. Whatever man or woman thought up that. And it's like the Olympic athlete. You know, they practice, practice, practice. It's like the professional football players or baseball. Well, we don't have baseball anymore. Whatever pro athletic teams we have that aren't on strike, they practice, they practice, they practice. For those of you that couldn't be here today, you know, they say, I don't need a coach, I don't need a seminar, I don't need to listen to tapes, I don't need to read a book, and I can do it. And the question that I ask very pointedly, then why in the hell haven't they? And I'm here to say that of all the seminars and all the tapes and all the books you've read, and by the way, I recommend reading 2 books. People have heard me say this over and over again. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, because everything I'm saying was said in a much more articulate way by Napoleon Hill in the 30s when he finished that 20-year study for Mr. Carnegie. And the second book is Release Your Brakes by Jim Newman, who's one of my mentors, who's semi-retired here in Los Angeles. Out of his stable are people like Dennis Waitley, Dyer, to name 2 that I can think of right now. And Jim Newman has helped me a great deal. And whatever polish I have, I attribute to Mr. Newman. Now, would you pass out the folders? We're not going to go through all the alibis because we went through them, and but they range from everything. If I was only thinner, to if these are alibis for why you're not more successful, to if I only didn't have a nagging wife or a nagging husband, if my kids only gave me respect, if I only was born rich, if I, you know, was 6'3", if I wasn't a midget, if I, you know, if I had blonde hair, if I only this, if I only wasn't married, if my wife didn't spend all the money, Mary, that I own on crap. I mean, they're the alibis people use for why they're not more successful. Now, if I had a chance, if I hadn't failed, if I only knew how, well, after today, tomorrow, and Saturday, you're going to know how, so you can't use that as an excuse anymore. If I had not been born under the wrong stars, God, if luck were not against me, etc., etc. But the most important, if, and this is the greatest of them all, if I had the courage to see myself as I really am, most of us don't. I would find out what is wrong with me and correct it. Then I might have a chance to profit by my mistakes and learn something from the experience of others. For I know that there is something wrong with me, or I would now be where I would have been if I had spent more time analyzing weaknesses and less time building alibis to cover them. It's human nature to make up reasons or excuses why we don't do something better. I'm one of the few individuals you will ever meet that applauds my mistakes. I applaud my mistakes because of the 50,000 plus business decisions I've made, ladies and gentlemen, I've only been right about 32,000 times. I've been wrong almost 20,000 times. 20,000, can you believe that? People pay me money all over the world to hear a guy that's made over 20,000 business mistakes. I'm $50 million poorer today than I was 3 or 4 years ago. Actually, it's only $40 million now. I made a comeback here recently of about $10 million, but I'm $40 million poorer today than I was a few years ago. And I've still made more money than all the personal development success coaches put together cumulatively. You stack them all on end, you take all the money they've made in their careers, and I've made more. Not more than the top one, more than all of them. So what I'm telling you, I've done myself. It's not because I read 700 books and had Jesus visit me. Now, maybe someday I'll be touched by God. I haven't yet. The closest thing is my wife. That's the closest I've been to being touched by the Lord. Maybe it'll happen this weekend. But I can tell you, it hasn't happened heretofore, and all these guys that tell you that it has, I'd be somewhat suspect. It's like when you get arrested and you go to jail, you become born again. It's, I would consider that that's somewhat suspect, these recent converts. So I can assure you that the things that I talk about are the things that I personally did. They're my big mistakes, and I've made some horrendous ones. I mean, just big-time mistakes. I mean, I liken one of my mistakes to if they would have traded Jackie Robinson away his second year of baseball. That would have been a pretty big year if the Dodgers would have traded away Jackie Robinson, don't you think? Well, I've made some business errors bigger than that. Bigger than that. And the reason people make mistakes, as Napoleon Hill put it, most people take the path of least resistance. That's why rivers and most people are crooked. They take the easy way out. You know, it's like telling somebody he's got halitosis. It's not easy. It's not too difficult for me. I don't really care. Because, see, I don't care what the person that's got halitosis thinks. My kid brother happens to be in the audience today. He doesn't have halitosis, but, I mean, you know, I've told him plenty of times, but I don't think he does right. It's a big difference. When you learn how much you're empowered, when you don't care, and I'm not talking about being mean, selfish, egotistical, non-caring about the other person, but when you don't really care what the other person thinks other than you're a professional and that you've got integrity, you have no idea how you're empowered. Because all the high-performance individuals that I'm going to talk about over the next 3 days don't. And that's, in my judgment, why there's so few high-performance women. Because more women care. More women care. Now, the 2 or 3 high-performance women I know, they rip your heart out and use your chest cavity as a serving plate. I mean, they don't care. I mean, but that's why we have so few. That's why we have so few, in my judgment, high-performance minorities, especially Hispanics, because I'm Hispanic, because of a lot in their culture, because they care, you know, the familia, the this and the that. I sure as hell don't. Of course, I have nothing to do with my family, as my kid brother would attest to during a break here. But that's one of the reasons. And I tell him he shouldn't have anything to do with the family either. When you're empowered with that, if you don't care, and I'm not talking about going to a cocktail party just to irritate people because you don't care what they think. You have no idea. You have no idea how you're empowered. You're here today because we're in the midst of a great emergency, and that emergency is, for the first time, our country's changing. Again, all these rules like IBM, who never fired anybody, the Japanese system that always was supposed to work, we're now seeing that it doesn't work forever. Nothing lasts forever. And we know that all the big corporations are going back to what they were started on, as Mr. Watson, when he started IBM, and that was that entrepreneurial spirit. How many have read the book by Mr. Watson on IBM, the original Watson? Okay, well, in that book, one of the things he says to a young management trainee, the young management trainee said, as the story goes, "Sir, how do I get to the top of this organization, the ladder, corporate ladder?" He puts his hand on his shoulder and says, "Double your failure rate, son, double your failure rate." Now just think about that, double your failure rate. I can just see your butts pucker up right now. I mean, that makes you uncomfortable. Because with failure comes all these things we've been taught since we were kids. Double your failure rate. The things that I talk about, ladies and gentlemen, aren't new. I mean, they've been around since man. I don't know if since caveman, but I mean, they've been around a long, long time. Now, I personally think I articulate them a little better than most. But if Ross Perot or Scully or Gates or Jobs or Rick Scott or any of these guys go into this business, I'm going to retire. Because I only want to do this as long as I'm the most successful business success coach in the country. If I'm not the most successful business success coach in the country, then I'm going to quit. I'll be playing more golf with Hoffman, and join another country club, and like another friend of mine does, and just commute back and forth between country clubs. But until that day comes, I'm going to continue to do this. Double your failure rate. We're going to get very focused here today. We're going to get what I call laser beam focused. Now, one of the things we're going to talk about in great detail is high performance people focus on the few, not the many. I only have 2 or 3 projects at a time. 2 or 3, period. I'm not smart enough. And if I'm not smart enough, ladies and gentlemen, with the greatest respect, there's not one man or woman in this room that's smart enough to focus on more than 2 or 3 things at a time. Because even though I made a joke about the 100 IQ, I'm not maybe the highest IQ in this room, but I'm certainly the smartest business-wise in this room. The reason I can say that with no braggadocious involved is because there's not many smarter than me in the country. So I would doubt that somebody that is smarter than me is paying me here to hear me today. 2 or 3 things, that's all. Successful people, high-performance people focus on the few, not the many. We're going to talk about tomorrow when my life changed in 1976. when I went from a micro person to a macro person. As Napoleon Hill would say, the money became so abundant I couldn't keep track of it. Most people in this room are micro-oriented. I've never met anybody in my life that was a high-performance, super successful, super rich. And, you know, I talk about super rich, and this is the 90s, and that's not a 90s term, but if you're not interested about super rich, a lot of the things I'm going to talk about are going to be like, you know, water off a duck's back. But if you are interested in that, and if you are interested in growing geometrically, as I did, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but I've grown many, many companies. The first company I grew was a real estate company. Didn't know anything about real estate. I was a graduate student here in Los Angeles. I grew it in 1 year to a $2 million company. That's what it sold for. Next, I grew a company in 3.5 years to a $50 million company. Next, I grew Great Western Resources in 8 years to a $425 million company. And I've grown many other companies, and I've helped companies to grow. In fact, some of them in this room. In different industries. As Ed pointed out, Great Western Resources, I started it when oil was $40 a barrel. What timing. And I rode it to $8 a barrel. And in the meantime, the company went from $820 to $425 million. Against the curve. I'm so jaded now, if the common consensus of this room was to do A, I'd do B. If all my lawyers, accountants, and advisors said do A, I'd do B. Because conventional wisdom is almost always wrong. In my book, I talk about 86 times I went against conventional wisdom. You can't do that, Dan. That used to be the name of the seminar. I didn't realize that you can't sell a seminar called You Can't with a negative. Finally, a college student I used to have when I taught school one year, a couple years ago, convinced me to change the name of the seminar to You Can Do That. But in my book, 86 times. One of those 86 things they said I couldn't do was marry a virgin. I can say that because my wife's not here today. 86 times, now it's about 110 times. Almost everything that you've learned in business is wrong. Now forgive it, it's not 12 hours because you're going to be here about 27 hours. But you've been exposed, we'll take, we'll say the average age of the women in the audience is 30. That's how I get snuggle up to them, see. 30 years old, if you're 30 years old, ladies, you've been exposed to 263,000 hours of crap. Bad thinking, bad learning, bad precepts, bad methods, bad just everything. Except for if you knew me during those 30 years, then of course I wouldn't have done that to you. I'm going to almost 50. I've been exposed to 438,000 hours of bad conditioning. And contrary to what you've been told, it can be changed in a 3-day seminar. It can be changed in a 1-day seminar. It can be changed. And as we get into this over the next 3 days, it can be changed if you want it bad enough. If you don't want it bad enough, I can sit here until I can't talk. It normally takes me more than 3 days to lose my voice. My 5-day and 6-day deals, I'm getting a little low on the explosion scale. But if you want it bad enough, just think of all the things you've been told over the years, now that you know, now that you're an adult, that you know is not right, that are not right. Most of the things that, for those of you that went to graduate school, got graduate degrees. I'm going to tell a little story about some Harvard and MBAs and lawyers that I'm working with, a little group, and some other young men that I'm working with, how basically the education they got was all for naught. All the things they learned. All the preconditioned notions, and especially when I think about being raised as a young Hispanic man, here in East Los Angeles when I was younger, all the crap that I was, you know, that I was given as gospel. It's just not, it just ain't so. It just ain't so. How does this apply to me? How do I take direct action? Don't forget that. You know, it costs extra for me to have this damn thing here. We're going to leave it up all day. How does it apply to me, and how do I take direct action? Failure is you're going to learn, contrary to what you've been told, some of that preconditioning you've had, you've been told that just the opposite. But failure is a resource. It helps you find the edge of your capacities. I've failed almost 20,000 times. I've been wrong. I failed at more businesses than I can count. Some of you have been in the same business all your life. Some of you have struggled at that business like a snail. No, not a snail, but a tortoise. Put your head out a little and it gets clipped. You keep it back in there for another 2 or 3 years. We're going to talk about how my father whole investment career was based on 2 investments. One he made and one he didn't make. When we talk about investment. His whole life. His whole life. Contrary to what you've been taught, progress often masquerades its trouble. If you tell me your business is running smoothly, then something's wrong with it. It's not growing. It's not growing. I don't want to hear any of the companies that I've just started or I own a majority, and there's some people in the audience that run some of those companies. I don't want to hear everything's just fine. I don't want to hear that crap. That means we're doing something wrong. We're doing something wrong. Because with big dreams come big challenges, big problems. And it can't be any other way. It just can't. Now, contrary to what you might have been told, I was not born ready. I used to say that when I was in OCS, during the Vietnam War. And by the way, I volunteered for the draft. I didn't go to Canada. And if I had smoked marijuana, you can bet your ass I would have inhaled it. Unlike, yeah, like a doofus that's been telling you that. I sure as hell would have inhaled it, because they told me the 60s were grand times. And I'm the kind of guy that if I had been there, I probably would have had a good time. But I wasn't born ready, and what you see before you is somebody that is trained and practiced to be successful. I practiced yesterday 8 hours, the day before yesterday 6 hours, the day before that 4 or 5 hours, and the day before that 3 or 4 hours. For today, I'm an accomplished public speaker. There are not many public speakers better than I am, but I still practice. I still practice bank presentations. I still practice presentations that I'm going to give to other financial institutions. If I practice being successful, what the hell should you be doing? I'm going to tell a story right now about 4 young men that I'm working with. I forget. One of them's in the audience, and I say I forget their name. Well, there's a number of young people in the audience that I'm working with, but one of them who went to Harvard, I forget their names because the odds of them being successful or actually following through are pretty remote, even though they went to Harvard, so I don't remember their names. I call one of them Labels, because he owned a label company. I call him one William and Mary, because he went to William and Mary. I call one Fidel, I remember his name. And I forget what I call the other one. What do I call the other one? Yeah, Doofus Harvard lawyer, yeah. Okay. Now later on today, I'm going to have him come up and explain to you how they turned a negative by signing a document they shouldn't have signed. They turned it around, and then by practicing and working with me and role-playing, because I said, you role-play the situation. These guys are older than you are. They're more sophisticated than you are. And you come with a signed document, a document that you wrote. He who writes the first draft wins, almost always. But most of you are too cheap, so you want the other side to drop the documents. That's moronic. He who writes the first draft almost always wins. Because I don't care how you turn it, how you twist it, how you change it, the intent of the document has been yours. I love when they say, you write the documents, Dan. Thanks. I bitch a little just to make them, make them feel like I'm hurt. Great. I lick my lips, saliva starts coming down. When I see Morgan Stanley MBA, saliva kind of, you know, runs down my cheek because I know we're going to eat their lunch. Fine. But how many times I belong to a country club near here, and I hear them bitching about always the lawyers this, the lawyers that, and they paid some lawyers $6,000. My lawyers won't even get out of bed for $6,000. I don't know what and they're talking about a month they paid them. I go, geez, I can't even, you know, I can't imagine. Remember that, he who writes the documents. But they went through this role playing, and they showed up on a Saturday morning wearing suits. Saturday morning, most business meetings show up, you know, relaxed. They were taken back the other side as soon as they saw the guys in suits, and all these guys are young. The amount of experience these young guys, I lost more in the brain cells that died when I was having martinis with Burrow last night. I lost more brain cells, business brain cells, than these guys have cumulatively, notwithstanding their graduate degrees from Harvard. But they ate the guy's lunch because they practiced. Now, it's one thing for you to think, well, young people should practice, but I practice. Lee Iacocca, when he made those speeches to Congress these 10 years ago when he bailed out Chrysler, he practiced. He role-played. And Lee's an accomplished speaker. The mouth from the South even practices. Trump practices. Why do we all practice? Absolutely, because it works. Because it works. Most of you in this audience, you know, we're going to get into this later, but I mean, when you go to see, this is my take your money uniform. This is when I take your money uniform. This is how I look when I'm going to take your money. This is when I show up. Financial institutions that I've been doing business with 20 years, this is how I dress. Sometimes sand the pocket watch. This is what I look like. You owe it to the other side. When you're going to take a man's or a woman's money, you owe it to them to look good. So the people where I play golf at the country club know that I'm not going to take their money because this is not how I dress. I ever show up dressed like this, they better watch out because I'm there to take their money. Yet, just think about how you made your last presentation, what you looked like. Like I was on a panel in San Diego, some of you heard me. They asked me what was the biggest marketing mistake I ever made in my life, and I said, being on this panel. But I'm not going to get into that because I told Ed that to the extent that I ever do business with any of those guys, I don't really care, first of all, but I mean, I'm not going to slam them. But some of you bought those guys' tapes and some of those things, and I got a flyer from a lady who's I've heard is a good speaker. She's now a business success coach. And she used to be part of the Tony Robbins organization. Now, what this woman knows about business, I won't say it's nothing, but it's closer to nothing than anything. And she helps people, you know, build your business and create marketing strategies, and I think it's quite amusing. And I believe everybody has the right to make a living. Far be it from me to say that this woman should make a living. Maybe she ought to be waiting tables, though, instead of being a business success coach. She's probably got more expertise at that. Not probably. The point is that when, and we're going to get into it in some depth, when you take advice, I mean, take it from someone that you respect, that's where you are, where you want to be. Because high-performance people hang around with high-performance people. The disciples that I mentor to in the audience hang around with me because I'm where they want to be, or, you know, at least I'm a stepping stone where they want to be. You're also going to learn here in the next 3 days, the contrary to what you've been told, you don't just let yourself down when you lose focus. You let your family down and you let your business down. Now, I've appeared before some really hardcore groups, and I've never met anybody that wanted to let their family down, no matter how big a SOB he or she was. When you lose focus. So very seldom that I do lose focus, but when I do, I think of my 3 children from hell, Dan Jr., Derek, and Kelly Ann. We call them the princes and princess of beasts, the dark side, my 3 children, and I think of them because I want to try to leave them as much as humanly possible without robbing banks. because I've already gone through my bank robbing stage. We're going to get to that when we talk about my background. I've already been, you know, I've been through that stage, and I survived somehow. So think of that. Next time you're starting doofusing around, you're not just letting yourself down, because a lot of people, see, most people don't have a sense of self-worth, high sense of self-worth, high sense of self-esteem, or high self-concept. High performance people have all the above. See, most people think they're lucky to be where they are. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the student must be ready before the teacher can appear. 2 or 3 of you, or 4 or 5 of you are already ready, because I'm already working with you. Maybe 2 or 3 more in the audience are ready. If that's the case, even though I don't have a glow over my head, halo, the teacher's here. Now, speaking of teachers and speaking of disciples, a year ago, August, a young man that couldn't be here because he's having the grand opening of his new big jewelry store in Northern California, a guy named Casey Stevenson, who attended my first seminar in May 1993 in Los Angeles at the Biltmore, I think it was. Casey is a hyper guy and had one little jewelry store in Hanford, California. I don't even know where the hell Hanford is. Anybody know where Hanford is? Yeah? Is it a little dumpy little town? Yeah, that's what I thought. Huh? I don't even know. Why would you buy? Who can afford jewelry? I guess the rich farmers can afford jewelry. Well, yeah? Pardon? Sailors. Oh, sailors. I got a couple of stories we'll tell when we're not being taped about sailors. But anyway, I got a fax. It says, Mr. Pena, I need to talk to you as soon as possible. It's very important. 2 minutes later, he realized he hadn't put his phone number down, so he sent me another fax with the phone number, same message. I call him back, and I said, I'm going out to dinner. And he says, my deal, this is a deal that his first big acquisition, his only acquisition, not first big one, his only one, and he was trying to swallow up the oldest a jewelry company in California, the 3rd oldest in the United States, founded in 1848, which was infinitely bigger, I don't know, 10, 20, 50 times bigger than he was. And everybody told him he couldn't, his banker told him he couldn't. To make a long story short, following one of my models, he went after it. And when I got back from dinner, he says, there's no need for you to give us a call back. The deal went through, and I am signing the papers now. I'll talk to you about it over the weekend. There were some more problems, but then a few weeks later, let it be known on Friday the 13th, minnow swallows whale in California. Now, we're going to talk about some techniques that are so foreign to your conditioning that your bank, your lawyer, your wife, your husband, whoever that you look to for advice will tell you you're absolutely nuts. There's no doubt in my mind that there's not a business in here that I can't grow. I can go to the yellow pages and any business that's in here, and I can find somebody that's kicking your ass in your industry. There's not anybody in this room. Now, if there's somebody in the yellow pages that I can pick out randomly, I may have to go through a few calls, but there's somebody in there, then somebody is bucking the curve, whether you're in a recessionary cycle or not. So somebody is doing better. Whether you're in the seminar business, whether you're in the plastics business, the restaurant business, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, or a groundskeeper, somebody is doing better. And somebody is doing geometrically better, not just better. Now, I'm not asking you, as the Spartan mother told her son, come back with your shield or be on it. That's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to consider a marginal change, because even if you make a marginal change, if you come anywhere towards my end of the continuum, you're going to be better off for your business, for your family, for your future. There's no doubt in my military or civilian mind. I've never seen it fail. When we start walking through the examples, and I'm not trying to demean any of the people that are going to give you examples, because you may not think they're not that smart. But, I mean, we've had people, a eel fisherman from Nova Scotia, who had no education, never been to formal school in his life. They call Eskimos Native Americans, don't they? Or, okay. I mean, his vocabulary was probably 200 words. Remember him, Bruce? And I told him how to figure out the marketing of eels, which I know nothing about. Very simple. You just kept raising the price until demand leveled off. I mean, it wasn't, geez. And he said, well, but I'm only charging $1.65 a pound. He says, I said, well, then he got up to about $4.50 a pound because he came to a second seminar. And when he used to pay in cash, and it smelled like fish. He used to drive down his truck from Nova Scotia with his, you know the woman on the, that program, Northern Exposure, the little chubby Eskimo lady that's the secretary to the doctor? That's what his wife looks like. And when he'd walk, she'd walk right behind him like this. You know, like his shadow. I like that. That's good. I like that. I wanted him to teach me how to do that. I said, we make a trade next time. You don't have to pay for the seminar. But he'd pay us in cash, and at that time, the one-day seminars were $8.95. And they smelled the money. Of course, I forget, Leanne, my administrative assistant in Texas, she didn't want to carry that stinky money. I said, I'll carry it. It doesn't bother me. All money smells good. But they work. It doesn't matter. And they've worked for very sophisticated companies as well. So we're not asking you to come back on your shield. Even though I believe that there's certain things worth dying for. Duty, honor, country, children, integrity. At one time, my company was worth dying for. For me, I would have taken a bullet for it. That's not the case anymore, even though I'm still the largest shareholder. Although we got in an intellectual discussion with a lady here recently about duty, honor, country, and one of my partners is in the audience, who we couldn't make her understand why we didn't run her off to Canada. But I'm not going to get into that because she obviously went to Berkeley. I don't know for those, but anyway, I don't want to get off in that. Okay, that's another story. People realize that not only aren't they afraid of them making a mistake because they realize it's just testing, but they're not afraid of having their employees make mistakes. And you don't go back and eat, when we talk about management styles, you don't go and eat their head off when they do make a mistake. Now just think about that. It's what you can get others to do. Because ideas are a dime a dozen, the person who puts them into action is priceless. Now, the presentation format, there really isn't one. The most important thing is, how does this apply to me? How do I take direct action? That's the most important thing. Now, the way we're going to get to be interactive, because normally I dominate audiences. If there were 6,000 here, it doesn't make any difference. I normally dominate audiences. When somebody asks me or makes a comment that I think that has added dramatically to the group, I'm going to give away money. And now, if I don't give any of these away, it's because I don't think anybody added spit.
I see you took my Spartan mother saying and put it into your show.
Yes. We're going to give away money that can be used. I'm going to have to talk to Ed because Ed just fainted in the back. I'm not sure what we can use it for, either seminars or product or whatever. But I'm going to give away money because I want your interaction. Now, it's important, if you don't come away from Saturday afternoon understanding what you can do to change your business, your life, or whatever, then I've failed. And I don't, even though I've made a lot of failures, I've made more successes, I don't want it to be added to my list of 20,000. The fact that 45 people, I didn't get to one of them. So it's important to me to get that interaction. And it's important for me so you can see how I think. Now, there's 4 or 5 people in the audience that are thinking more and more like me now that I've worked with them a while. Their spouses, some spouses say that's good. Some spouses say that's great. Some aren't so crazy about it. It's all about level commitment, though. Okay, now I am, again, the most important thing is to answer all the questions, and I'll go through my Peñaisms and the you can't do that's. And but the basis of what we're going to talk about, and we're not going to go into the detail of all my transactions because we're going to go into the details of making your transactions bigger. Everything I'm telling you today, tomorrow, and the next day, help me accomplish the 5 following things. getting a $20 million contract with the federal government with no other employees or office space, only a phone and a leased fax machine, and not on a government set aside because I'm a minority. I didn't understand I was a minority till I was 31 years old. I didn't know that. I found out when I was 31. Achieving $50 million revenue my first year in business. First year. Not my 10th year. Buying a foreign subsidiary from a Fortune 200 sized company over the phone on New Year's Eve. Buying a $150 million U.S. company from its multi-billion dollar foreign parent when they didn't want to sell to me. It was a Canadian company, so it wasn't quite fair because there was only one of me and there was 60 of them, but it was a Canadian. If it had been somebody other than a Canadian, it probably would have been more a fair fight. And then turning $820 into $400 million in 8 years when energy prices went from 40 to below 10. Just think of the last seminar you went to, the last 5, and I'm not blowing smoke up my backside. Did the individuals that you listened to have those kinds of credentials? I don't think so. Because you plan and God laughs. You're going to learn, contrary to what you've been taught, that most of the planning you've done heretofore is a joke. Because most of the things that will turn your business one way or another, you can't plan for. I'm not saying don't plan. That's not what I'm saying. But then when your plan goes wrong, most people beat themselves for 6 months, 16 months, 2 years, 5 years. Some people never get over it. Now, why should you be so devastated when you can't plan for that anyway? When I got thrown out of Great Western Resources by my partners, the Kuwaitis, ultimately, after Desert Storm, I didn't know Iraq was going to invade Kuwait. My shareholders were very disappointed in me. They said I should have known. I'm serious. I'm not. I assure you, the new chairman doesn't know any more about them invading this thing when Saddam went to the border, close to the border. The new chairman didn't know any more about it than I did, and so. But you know, they didn't invade, so he didn't get in trouble. You can't beat yourself up for things that you can't control, although we do all the time, especially as parents. There's a lot of things we can't control, and our kids do, and we beat ourselves up. Or my wife beats herself up. I don't beat myself up. But now, can you turn down the lights a second?
I think if you turn them off right there, it'll help.
Where? Is there a light switch here?
I think there's one right there.
Oh. We're only going to spend a couple minutes on my background, but just in case anybody forgot, these are my ancestors. I didn't come from Beverly Hills. I came from Boyle Heights. I came from BH, but not the right one. The man that looks like Pancho Villa sitting down is my grandfather. He looks like Pancho Villa, ladies and gentlemen, because he rode with Pancho Villa. I mean, that's why he looks like it. Vince, have you seen this picture? Yeah. Okay. The lady standing up is my grandmother's, deceased, and the row of children were the children that they had before my grandfather died. And then there she was a widow, a 32-year-old widow. And the little guy in her lap is my father, which my children call Grandpa Bullethead because he has no hair on his head now. Grandpa Bullethead. Now this is where I came from. This is where Vince came from, my kid brother. And I'm not demeaning that just because we're from poor stock, but I don't want you to get the impression that I started out with any money, because that's, you know, when I got married, I got my wife's debts. And it hasn't changed much after 21 years. And this is the school I went to, which I don't know how you make this lighter, but you can't see exactly, but this window right here is the window when I was in the 3rd grade. I dropped an aquarium trying to hit my teacher in the head. And I was expelled from school 3 times before I was in the 3rd grade. And this is where I used to live. That lot used to have a house on it. And the reason the city put up that chain link fence with barbed wire is to keep bodies out of it. In East Los Angeles. That's where I come from. That's my background. And now I'm almost afraid to take this chart off about does it apply to me, because you're going to forget. But I promise I'll put it right back, so don't forget. Now, that's where I was from, and that's where I live now. People want to know, what's quantum growth, Dan? If that's not quantum growth, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what is. And if I can do that, having been in trouble as a kid, been arrested several times as a minor, unfortunately a couple times when I wasn't a minor, been thrown out of school, expelled from school before I was in the 3rd grade, graduated with a 2.55 average from high school, unlike some of the kids in here graduating with 4.6 or 9.3 on a scale of 4. Having gone to a little state college, which isn't so little now, this is what I call quantum growth. And always thinking of myself looking like this. Oops, got it upside down. I got a driller on the wrong side there. That's how I always perceive myself. Now just think about how you perceive yourself. When you look in the mirror, whether you're fat, skinny, short, tall, bald, wrinkled, how do you look at yourself? I adore the hell out of myself. Even though I'm getting a little portly in my old age. Just, with pounds comes money. That's what I look at, how I look at it. Now just think about it. As we're going through these next 2 days plus, almost 3 days, how you can improve how you think of yourself. Because I assure you, as we get through this, you're going to see the better you feel about yourself, the more... This was my dream, not yours. I'm not suggesting this should be your dream. I could wish a lot worse things on you, please believe me. But as we go through this, you just supplant what's important to you. Because the bigger that item is that's important to you, the higher the probability of you succeeding in a geometric way. My dad used to work 3 jobs when I was a kid. He was a policeman, made $142 a month, and he had 2 extra jobs. One at Bullock's as a security and one someplace else. Now what if he had thought differently? What if his goal, instead of keeping me alive till I was 21, what if his goal was to build a business? What if his goal was to own a small ranch in New Mexico, where he came from, Demi, New Mexico, but it wasn't? Now just think about what your thought process is, what your goals are. And we're going to talk a lot about goal setting. And again, most of what you've learned about conditioning, your conditioning about goal setting is all dead wrong. It's all dead wrong. Okay, now I want to get this back because you're going to forget if I don't put this back up here. Okay. Now briefly, I was born in 1945. 4 days after they bombed Hiroshima. I had nothing to do with the bombing. Nothing. As some people would say, I used to be partners with JAPEX, Japan National Oil Company, and Mr. Ito-san, who was the chairman, and Wada-san, who was the president, used to ask me, you know, what I thought about the bombing, and we used to talk about the war occasionally. I said, I was 4 days old. I mean, I'm sure I would have said it seemed like a good thing to do at the time. I mean, I have no idea. But I had nothing to do with the war. I was raised in East Los Angeles till I was a teenager. We moved to the Valley. I graduated from high school. Just to give you a little insight into my academic prowess. 3 weeks before graduation in 1963, the Boys Vice Principal asked me to leave campus. He gave me my diploma, said, we don't want your kind on campus. Ruben Munoz, who's currently serving life for murder in Florida, Walt Wojak and I went to the Reseda Pool Hall on Reseda Boulevard and started shooting 9-ball. Which is one of my 9-ball partners is in the audience today. After 7 or 8 or 10 pitchers of beer, we decided, Walt being the intellect, he ultimately graduated from UCLA, says, we got rights. They can't do this to us. So we went back to campus with our diplomas and we threw them in the Boys Vice Principal's face, says, we're going to go to class. You can't keep us from going to class. I don't want you because you're going to disrupt the thing. You're right. We set the school on fire. We rioted and we went around tearing girls' bras off. We did all kind of crazy things. And he was right to try to get us off campus. And but that was kind of you know, and with a 2.55, I was one of the brighter ones. I mean, I think I was the fourth brightest guy on the football team. And I mean, we didn't have a bunch of intellects. I don't know. And the way things have changed, a kid got killed on campus 2 years ago at Reseda High School, where I ultimately graduated. That's where I ultimately graduated, Reseda High School out in the valley. And it's hard for me to believe, but the world's changed. I went into the war, as I told you. I volunteered for the draft, and if I would have smoked marijuana, I assure you I would have inhaled. I'm not saying I did or I didn't. I got out, and I went back to college, and I finished 4 years of school in 2.5 years. Because most of the classes I took 4, I went in, you couldn't count for anything. I had more Fs than I had anything else. Graduated on the dean's list. Applied to go to graduate school, and went to graduate school at UCLA and Cal State Northridge. At the same time, I lived in San Diego, and I sold real estate, became the leading salesman in the nation with a 94.6 closing average. You either bought from me or you died. There wasn't any in-betweens. For those of you, how many have sold real estate? I mean, I was a closing son of a, I mean, I was dynamite closer. They called me the hammer. I was the hammer. And that company went bankrupt. I went to Wall Street, became the first director of financial planning on Wall Street, founded financial planning. I started, as we know, the first financial planning department on Wall Street, and became a TV media spokesperson, and ultimately left there and went in the oil business, and the rest is history.
Well, for a Gerber baby, that's not bad.
Oh, I forgot that. I was a Gerber baby. Yeah, he's got a good memory.
Where's my 50 bucks?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's worth 50 bucks, but for sure it's worth a drink. In 1945, when they first started the new labels for Gerber food, you know, the little fat-cheeked blonde thing, they picked 5 kids. I was one of the original 5 Gerber babies. I don't know where the other 4 of them are. I hope they've been as successful as I have been, more so. But so I was one of the original 5 Gerber babies, which I might add, my parents felt very uncomfortable with. Now just think of that mindset.
Yeah.
You know, the exposure. And my family felt uncomfortable because I was blonde and blue-eyed. There weren't too many blonde, blue-eyed in East Los Angeles with the name Pena. You know, they just weren't. So, you know, of course, my dad, being jealous, thought that maybe I was the milkman's baby. Or, although, as Vince will attest, I look just like him, the older I get especially. But, so that was my life growing up, and and what really helped turn my life around was OCS. Having responsibility for life at a very young age. Now, I'm not going to go through this other than to tell you that the things that we're going to walk through, we're going to get ready to take a break now, the things that we're going to walk through are directly related. The way this seminar's changed today than normal, instead of me showing you the techniques through how I did it for me, we're going to show them how that we're going to do it for you. So I don't want that critique on my form either. You didn't show me. I didn't show you because you didn't ask me. And I think that, although unlike some of the other gurus, I do talk to you at the breaks, and I don't have a massage therapist, you know, and my psychic and all this other crap. But, you know, I would rather you ask me the questions during the workshop so everybody can share, because I think everybody can benefit from all the questions, except because we're not going to ask any stupid ones, are we?
No.
Great Western grew rapidly, and if you go to 1111 Bagby in Houston and you go up to the 17th floor, we have 44,000 square feet of office space, and it was how I dreamt it. The doors open on the 17th floor, you step out, Italian marble, as far as you can see, oak panel, a grand GW, gold GW about this high on the wall, used to be a big picture of me, it's gone now, and a drop-dead gorgeous, hot-looking receptionist sitting behind this big oak thing. And that's how Great Western looks. And there's 2 floors there, 44,000 square feet. But that's how I dreamt about it. And so, just as when I dreamt about my home in Palos Verdes and my home in Scotland. Now, I've raised, when we talk about capital, people always ask me, where do I get capital for my business? I raised $1 billion when you couldn't raise money for energy. $1 billion. I didn't raise, you know, billions and billions. I raised $1 billion, though, which is probably a lot more than most people in this room did or have to date. Now, cumulatively, you should raise a lot more money than I did. To scale a mountain of success, you need an experienced guide, ladies and gentlemen. I am that guide. I don't believe, and I don't say this braggadociously, you will be in front of anybody or have in front of you anybody that's more experienced in building a business you haven't heretofore. So I hope you take advantage of it. Since you paid me, I hope you take advantage of it. For those of you that didn't pay me, I don't really care. But for those of you that paid me, please take advantage of it. There is no such thing as a clear sailing, so we all have to learn to navigate troubled waters. The reason I get paid so much money is because I do things that make you uncomfortable. I make things that make you pucker up. I do things that make you sick to your stomach. Salesmen get paid a lot of money because they make cold calls. You got to be nuts to like making cold calls. I mean, you've got to be nuts. I used to smile and dial. When I was doing offerings, both on Wall Street and in London, and I'm the CEO of the big company now, and they'd say, we're having trouble putting the stock away. I used to go down to the institutional sales desk. And I'd say, what's your name, son? My name is Henry Doofus, sir. And I'd say, give me those phone numbers. And I used to call up, you know, TWA Pension Fund or Prudential UK. I'd say, this is Henry Doofus of S.G. Warburg. And I'd walk them through, and I'd make a sale. And but salesmen get paid a lot of money because they do something that makes people uncomfortable. Pots and pans salesmen, encyclopedia salesmen. High-performance people get paid a lot of money because they do things that make you uncomfortable that you don't want to do. There's virtually nothing I won't do that's legal. Nothing. I can't think of any. You can't think of anything that I won't do. You know? I'd roll in the mud in Haiti, the AIDS-infested water in Haiti. Doesn't make any difference. Some people say I've done business with the devil. Some people say I am the devil. I'll do anything. It doesn't mean it. I don't care if it's embarrassing to me. I don't care if it's demeaning to me. Because the ends do justify the means, and we're going to talk a lot about that. Because I'm willing to pursue my dream no matter what the obstacles. Now, I'm going to take this down now. Now, don't forget. Because I approach everything in my life with passion, fire, and grit. Everything in my life with passion, fire, and grit. And why do I pursue everything in my life with passion, fire, and grit, ladies and gentlemen? Because it works. No other reason. Because it works. Now, you've heard me use the example, for those of you that have heard me speak. If we're playing sandlot football, and we've got a great athlete here, and we've got a mediocre athlete here, and I say, and the mediocre athlete says, Dan, please pass me the ball, please pass me the ball, hit me in the flat, I can beat this doofus in the flat, I can beat, and then, but I'm thinking I ought to give it to the athlete with this last down, 2 seconds to play, but fourth down, and he says, well, there's a 50-50 chance I could drop it, it is raining, Dan, and you know, I've got a sprained wrist, who am I going to throw the ball? Average athlete. Passion, enthusiasm. I've never met a high-performance person that wasn't super enthusiastic, even when he was wrong. Trump's a perfect example. I mean, that guy, enthusiastic no matter what. When he had a negative $6 billion net worth or whatever it was. And guess what? He got the financing, didn't he? If you guys were underwater, most of you in this room, you'd pucker up so you couldn't even walk. I mean, you couldn't even get into the financial institutions. Plus, he made dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of presentations to get that money to pull himself out. Most of you would just roll over and go out of business. Because Trump, whatever you say about him, he handles and approaches everything with passion, fire, and grit. And when you think about it, all those high-performance people, passion, fire, and grit. Have you ever seen, well, you probably haven't, but I've been in rooms where these guys have made presentations. I get fired up. Of course, we all get fired. We fire each other up. I mean, because we're born buyers. You show me a born seller, I'll show you a born buyer. Salesmen are the easiest touches. They buy. Even though, I won't say they're being conned, even though they know the realities of selling. This is why I have developed or been given that name over the years. A few people actually call me it in this room. A couple years ago for Halloween, I went around with the kids. They didn't ask me back the last couple of years. I went around wearing a shoulder. I have a permit to carry a concealed weapon in the state of California. And I went around with a shoulder. I was dressed like Rambo. I had a big, long knife. I had a real weapon, pistol in my shoulder holster. I had a real one on my hip. I might have been carrying something else. I don't remember now. And we'd go to these houses, and the people would look, and they'd wonder if those things were real. And I said yes. And and so my wife didn't ask me to go trick-or-treating since then. And I said, you know, you never know you're going to bump into at night. And so, of course, where I live, you know, they wouldn't know bad times if it bit them in the ass where I live. They're up there in the fairyland above the smog level. My house is 1,600 feet above sea level, and they all float around. You know, the air is thin, so it's like they're all on dope. They're just all floating around. They're not knowing shit from apple butter. You know, woo! And most of them couldn't buy their house today. They couldn't afford it. They'd live up where I live. Because they made it in the bull markets of the 50s, 60s, and 70s and something, and now they don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. But if I can just get you a little bit closer to that end of the continuum, the Danbo, you're going to be much more successful. Now I'm going to put this back because I don't want you to forget. Because obstacles are things a person sees when he takes his eye off the goal. I don't see obstacles. My mother, I give her credit for one thing, probably the only thing. My mother didn't let me walk until I was 3 years old. She carried me on her hip. Some people said I breastfed till I was 6, which isn't true. That's a lie.
It's been longer.
Yeah, maybe it was longer. But the other thing, my mother never told me no. She never used the word no. She still doesn't to this day, and she's 73. She doesn't use the word no when I was growing up. Now, some of the girls I used to date used to think that I didn't know the definition of no. But that's not true. But maybe I didn't know the definition of no, because you can tell me no, the deal doesn't work. The banker can tell me no. The accountant can tell me no. I just don't hear no. No means yes to me. If I tell most of you in this audience no, it's no. But it's not no. You make the rules, and we're going to talk about that. You, as an individual, make the rules. Interest rates. Your parents, do you think they'd ever negotiate an interest rate with a bank on their house? Mine never did. Everything's negotiable. I said this at the Harvard Club a year or so ago, chairman of Chemical Bank. I said, is every single interest rate you have on mortgages, either variable or fixed, negotiable? And I kept hammering them and hammering them, hammering. This is the part that got cut off the tape. And he finally said yes. Then he got up and left. Every interest rate the chemical banks got is negotiable. So what about the chicken little doofus banks you do business with? You can go in there and ram it up their backside. You can do anything you want with them. They're yours. They're dead meat. I mean, a $50,000 or $100,000 deposit or a $20,000 deposit is a big deposit to these little banks that most of you do business with. Yeah, what do? When you go in to see the bank, you know, it's like you're going to see the Undertaker or something. Because that's the way you've been conditioned. That's how your parents did it and your grandparents did it. But that's not how you have to do it. Because obstacles are things that a person sees when he takes his eye off the goal. Whoever says money can't buy happiness doesn't know where to shop. Now, this is credited to the Sunday Telegram, but guess who said it first? As my wife told the Sunday Telegram when she was being interviewed once, Whoever says money can't buy you happiness doesn't know where to shop. And now in Sunday Telegram, whenever you see it, it's because the Sunday Telegram said it. That's not true. Sunday Telegram is a paper in London, England. My wife said that, God bless her. And boy, she knows. Beverly Hills, the shops, until we got her own private phone number and computer system and all this, they'd call up from Chanel. We got a new shipment in of this and that, or we got this and we got that. They will bring the dresses down to her in the truck, all her size. 2, 3, 4, whatever she wears, and they'll bring them down. Half of my wife's phone calls on her messages are stores trying to sell her stuff. Half. I got a package from UPS the other day, a couple weeks ago now, and I thought I didn't really, the L Peña didn't look like it could have been a D, so I opened it up, and it's a pair of shoes from some fancy shoe store, and it cost $600, and the little teeny shoes, a little flat, hardly any leather on them. And so I left them on the bed in the master bedroom, and so Linda came home and saw them. She scoops them up with the papers, didn't say anything, and then when I come back in the bed, they were gone. I said, where's that stuff? Oh, what stuff? And I said, you know, Linda, why did you? So I started in on her about buying the shoes, because she's got, I don't know, 200 pair of shoes or something. And she said, well, did you need them? No. Why'd you buy them? She says, because I wanted them. I said, okay, well, what can I say, you know? You know? Yeah, she kind of said it all. She kind of said it all. Okay, now we're going to go back to your favorite chart, because I don't want you to forget. And the point Linda's making is I buy things when I want them, not when I need them. I had my first Rolls Royce when I was 26 years old. I didn't need a Rolls Royce when I was 26. I used to take it to the 49-cent car wash with my wife, drinking beer in the front. This one used to sit in the cars when they used to go through the car wash. And I remember they broke my antenna off the top. The old Silver Cloud had an antenna on the top. Broke it off, and I was really mad. And Linda says, as I'm screaming at the poor little illegal aliens like we're complaining about here now, and I'm screaming, Dan, we went to 49 cents. We could have paid $2.99 up the street, and that wouldn't happen. So I said, okay, I'll let it slide. But I don't have to go through a Lotus 1, 2, 3 to rationalize, even before I had any money. When I want something, I buy it. God knows my wife has just, after 24 years being with me and 21 years married, she operates under the same, you know, it's hard for me to fault her for that. Till I look at I get a printout once a quarter from my accountants, and then I kind of gag. I don't even look at it till the end of the year, because I don't want to get depressed. I don't get depressed, but that might make me depressed. Because I feel good about what I do no matter what, even if I'm wrong. And I've done some hellaciously wrong things in my life, believe me. Okay, now, let me see here. I want to take a short break and be thinking about, because the time is coming close, where we're going to talk about your revelation, what you want to accomplish, and try to be as specific as you can. Now, don't give me a 50-part question. Give me one part, I mean, and we'll walk through it. And so make sure that it's something that's important to your business or to your life or to your career, so we can walk through it. Okay, let's take a short break. And when I mean short break, this isn't like one of these doofus deals where everybody wanders around 40 minutes. 5 minutes. And part of that new foundation is, firstly, is new rules. And the first new rule is you make the rules. Your bank, your partners, your mother, your father, your whoever. Now, in a perfect world, and there aren't hardly any perfect worlds, there are perfect situations, your spouse is supportive, or your more significant other. I just learned that this year. I think it's a riot when you call somebody your significant other. That means you can call, you know, your bimbo as your significant other, your paramour, your concubine. I think that's great. I just learned that, more significant other, you know. And should be supportive, though. Now, in my particular case, my significant other is very supportive. And to the extent, like I told her the other day, I said, you know, I haven't worked in 3 years. She said, well, you're running around doing your speech, and aren't you having fun giving speeches? I said, yeah, I enjoy it. She said, well, if you're happy, I'm happy. I said, well, I haven't worked in 3 years. I mean, where I haven't been the head of a big company for 3 years. I still have a lot of business interests. She says, well, aren't you happy? Then I'm happy. Now Linda knows how I think and how the game's played. So she knows that's the answer that'll get me off her back. And she uses it quite often. And she may very well, tomorrow while she's here, if I ask her of a question, she may answer me that way. So you know, she knows that's the Pavlov response that gets me off of her back, you know. Now, part of those new rules will make some of you uncomfortable because it's almost like being rebellious. But as Thomas Jefferson said long ago, now there's a guy that was into concubines and paramours, now that I think about it. I hadn't thought about that till just now.
He truly was one of the fathers of our country.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And he didn't discriminate either, as far as I could tell.
No.
Yeah.
There at Monticello, you can go to the slave quarters where he kept his ladies of a different skin color, for sure.
I'll be damned. So, part of this new way of thinking is to develop a sense that no matter what you say and no matter what other people tell you, it's all right. Because, now, as Evita Peron said, it doesn't matter what the morons say. It doesn't. And Peron, I believe, is spelled incorrectly. Huh? So is Evita?
Yeah.
How do you spell Evita? E.
E.
I'll be damned. Well, see, the person that I had this to was a redneck from Texas, so they don't know any better. But the point is, it doesn't matter what the morons say. And most of the people that have been giving you financial advice on your company, most of the people that represent you as accountants, lawyers, business advisors with the greatest respect are morons. They may have higher than the requisite IQ to be 60 to be a moron, but they're still morons because they don't know what, they haven't been there, they haven't done that. Most of the people that you look to for advice, and it gets back to you're going to turn out to be what you hang around with and who you associate with. What, did the bulb go out? What happened? Ed? Ah. Now, and those, oh, I got it fixed. Oh. And these are harsh words. It doesn't matter what the morons say. I think that you could safely say those are harsh words. But ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter what they say. If you want to be a high-performance person, I can assure you that none of the high-performance people that I've ever been exposed to, and I've been exposed to a whole bunch of them, they don't care what the press says, which are another form of morons. They don't care what any of the media says unless they're running for office. And I assure you, Ross, after he endorsed Governor Richards, who I personally think he abhors, but he hates Bush more, it just doesn't matter. And we go all through our life listening to people giving us advice that have no basis. None. Zero. In fact, they have a minus basis. You know, there's an old saying, or when I was taking computer language stuff in college many years ago, garbage in, garbage out. Almost everything categorically that you've heard heretofore is garbage. And you wonder why you've got problems or you've had difficulties growing your business. Just think for a moment. When you started your business, for those of you that are in business, or you started your career, the passion you had when you went to work, you wanted to get up in the morning. You wanted to be out there. You wanted to face the problems, the challenges, the whatevers. Now I see people on Tuesday and Wednesday, gee, I wish it was Friday. And now it's because you've lost that passion. You've lost that lust that you had when you first met your significant other. Then it becomes just same old, same old. It's tough to keep that. Craig, how come you looked over at Mary when I said that? It's tough to keep that passion, right, Mary? It's tough to keep that passion going. But if you practice, like all these other things, And I say it over and over again. I practice at all this stuff still. And if I practice at it, God Almighty, I can't begin to believe why everybody in this room shouldn't be able to, you know, think that it's important for them to practice. I assure you, the people, the higher you go up the economic scale, the more competitive it is. You can bet your bottom dollar that the other guys practice. All those guys that run these big companies and have these big net worths, and I mean, they practice. Oscar Wilde, who's one of the most successful guys in the oil patch, he still practices his craft. He's very good. Tough. All of them do. You know? And just as an aside, for balanced life, we're going to talk about in the next 3 days, Eric Heiden, the ice skater, who's got 36-inch thighs. Is that balanced? I mean, he walks around like this. Is that balanced? He won I don't know how many gold medals, right? So you're looking for the 6 or 8 gold medals without the 36-inch thighs. It doesn't happen. I was away from my family 242 days in 1987. 242. Some of you haven't been away from your spouses or your families 242 days in your whole damn career. And you wonder why your business or whatever is plopping along at 2 or 4 or 6 or 9% growth. That's if you're lucky you're on the growth side. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. I'm not talking about the ones that aren't on the growth end. Well, this thing with Evita doesn't want to stay there. Come on. Doesn't matter what the morons say. Okay, enough of Evita. Spelled both words wrong. It's all right. You got the moron part right, right? We got that spelled right. That's because I know a lot of morons. I know how to spell that right. I put moron in a lot of my correspondence to people over the last 20-plus years. Has anybody else ever put moron in a letter, a business letter? 1, 2, 3. Nobody's used doofus. I think I'm the only one that ever used. Anybody use doofus? Oh, well, we got a few doofus users. Okay, well, that's good. Because my philosophy is if you want a friend, buy a dog. I'm not here. I don't really care if you like me or not. You know, if you pay me, that's good. If you pay me again, that's better. And if you pay me as many as some of you pay me, that's tremendous. Because birthdays, anniversaries, holidays are for poor people. Now, the reason that I celebrate Friday the 13th, my anniversary with my wife, we were married on Friday the 13th, is because I've missed 16 of 21 anniversaries with my wife. And my wife feels that at least I'll be home some of the Friday the 13th, so we celebrate every Friday the 13th as our anniversary. I've missed 8 of my son Derek's birthdays. It's August the 6th. I've missed 7 of 8 birthdays of my daughter, September 26th. And I've only missed a few of my son, oldest son, who's almost 13, January 1st, because you don't do a deal. Normally the deal either died or you closed it before January 31st. So I've only missed 3 of my son's birthdays, January 1st. I've missed so many of mine I don't remember. I've missed so many Christmases, so many Easters, so many Valentine Days and all those things. I mean, I can't count them all. Because when you're in business, there becomes a critical mass in a transaction or in something you're doing, and if you break that critical mass, there's no chance of geometric growth, because you get the business done when you're able to get it done. The difference between a professional and an amateur is patience and persistence. A professional is someone who can do his best work when he doesn't feel like it. When he doesn't feel like it. It gets back to, I get paid a lot of money because I do things that make most of you uncomfortable. A professional, and this was Alistair Cook who said that, who is a famous British broadcasting guy, BBC, who made, I think, I forget how many consecutive broadcasts, and he couldn't have been well all those 1,500 or 15,000 broadcasts. Just impossible. Motivation is what gets you started. Habit is what keeps you going. Jim Ryan, the former world record holder in the mile. Motivation gets you started. Habit keeps me going. I don't have to re-motivate myself time after time, because perseverance is not a long race. It's many short races, one after another. When you get out of here, Saturday evening, you go back to work Monday, people, and you try to instill some of the knowledge that you gained here, people are going to say you're crazy. And that means you're making progress. If nobody says that, what the hell happened to you? What, do you go radical on us? Then that means you didn't learn anything. And then that's too bad. But I'm only going to touch a few in the room. A few more than I've already touched. Because everybody has a fear of the responsibilities and expectations that come with success. And if you don't think that, you're kidding yourself. Most people aren't successful because they're not successful or comfortable with the trappings of success. The trappings are heavy. The air is thin up here. That's why they call them blue bloods. You can't just be a regular guy and go, I use the analogy bowling. I used to give this talk to my coal miners. I used to own quite a few coal mines. You know, then you're just not going to be one of the guys. If you decide that, the analogy I gave them, you want to take a night class in engineering instead of going to the bowling league on Tuesdays and Fridays. It's different for this group, not much different. I see a few potential bowler coal miners here. You can't be one of the guys. You can't do the whistle stop at 8 o'clock on Saturdays. Because fear is false expectations appearing real. False expectations appearing real. That's what you're afraid of. It's like my children started a new school here up on the hill, Rolling Hills Preparatory, the last couple of years. And my youngest son, who just started this year, he's in middle school, he was very much, he had a lot of anxiety about going to the school. And then after the first day he comes back, and you probably experienced this yourself with your own children, first day to school. Oh, how'd you like it? Everything was great, Dad. Everything was great. You were right. Everybody liked me. My teachers weren't bad, blah, 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 blah. But, I mean, he had false expectations that appeared real to him because he was only 11 years old when he started the school. You know, even though I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt, you're multiples of 11 here. Yet you're still going through life having false expectations appearing real. Does that mean you haven't grown at all? We can get into that. I'd rather not, because if you don't like some of the things I've said heretofore, you'll absolutely loathe what I've got to say about that. And when I start pounding your parents and the doofuses you hang around with, there comes a time when one must turn and face the tiger. As super success, you're a tiger. Some of you in this room are already real successful. But as the women would say, you haven't broken through the glass ceiling, whatever the hell that means.